Phantasmic Journey Podcast is brought to you by Tascam and Amazon Studios. For more than 30 years, Tascam has developed products for every segment of the sound and music industry. From the high-end audio professional in a major post-production studio to the novice of hobbyist at home, Tascam is everywhere. They are a company committed to providing their customers audio and video solutions that enable breakthroughs by using sound in ways that are exciting as they are accessible, even recording the voices of the dead. You asked for a non-scripted paranormal TV show. You begged for a non-staged paranormal TV show. You begged and you pleaded, and we have listened. We present to you Season 1 of The Paranormal Journey into the Unknown. It was released October 31st, 2017. In this series, we show you what it's like behind the scenes and conducting a real paranormal investigation. Join Gavin Kelly, Paula Purcell, and their special guests to seek out the existence of life after death by going to numerous haunted locations such as jails, hospitals, battlefields, and museums, collecting compelling evidence by means of video, photography, and EVPs. In this season, the crew investigates the St. Albans Sanatorium, Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, Jailhouse Pizza, and the famed Monroe House. And you can watch Season 1 of The Paranormal Journey into the Unknown on Amazon.com right now. Season 2 and 3 will be coming soon.
And good evening and welcome to the Phantasmic Journey Podcast. We are coming to you live from the PGH studio here in downtown Paducah, Kentucky. I am your host, Gavin Kelly, and sitting right next to me is my lovely wife, which is my co-host, Paula Kelly. Syndication is brought to you by Live 365 and iHeartRadio. You can listen live via the web by going to streaming.live365.com/A00036. Or, if you happen to have an iPhone, search in the App Store for the Live 365 app, install it, run it, search for WGKC, Today's Hottest Country. Same goes for an Android phone. Search for it in the Google Play Store for the Live 365. Search for WGKC, Today's Hottest Country. Now, I bet you're asking yourself, why WGKC, Today's Hottest Country? Well, to answer that question, every Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m., I am the DJ for the country radio station. Pretty cool, huh? Well, let's not get too sidetracked here. Tonight, we have an awesome guest. He is a paranormal technician for A&E's Ghost Hunters. His twin passions for history and the paranormal led him to establish the American Paranormal Research Association team, APRA. And he has investigated over 200 public and private locations with APRA, many of which bear historical significance. I am talking about our guest tonight, Brandon Alvis. You can see him on Ghost Hunters Season 1 and 2 on A&E. How are you doing this evening, Brandon?
I'm great, Gavin, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's our pleasure. It's really cool to have you on the show. Paula's over here being very quiet.
No.
So what's the weather like out there where you are?
You know, this morning it was actually raining pretty good, but now it's about 70 degrees and sunny. It's weird how it changes so quickly, but it's a beautiful day.
Yeah, it was raining over here too, and I wasn't too happy about it.
But it warmed up a little afterwards.
Yeah, it did a little bit. And the sun came on out, and I'm like, wait a minute. Well, first of all, this morning it started pouring, and I looked out the window from my office, and I'm just like, where did this rain come from? It was like sunny on one side of the building and rain on the other, and I still don't understand how Mother Nature likes to play that game.
Yeah, it's strange, but I mean, it was, it was very, very sunny at this point, but earlier this day it was very rainy. So that's kind of how the California weather works out here. So it's been fun, though. It's good to be back for a little bit. I've been on the road for about a year now with doing Ghost Hunters, so it's good to be back and back in my hometown, so I'm enjoying it.
I mean, I tell you what, that is a lot of traveling, a lot of airplane tickets, mind you.
That's no joke. We took, close to almost 100 flights this year, I'm thinking. So it's been pretty crazy.
Well, someone racked up some frequent flyer miles.
Right? That is a lot.
Hey,
of
that's
fun.
A good perk. Good perk there. That's a good perk.
Yeah. So you're in California?
Yeah, that's right. I live in Ventura, California, which is what some consider the hidden gem of Southern California. So love it here, not too far out of LA, but far enough out of LA to feel like you're out of it. So I enjoy it.
I was actually raised in Pasadena for 19 years.
Yeah, not far at all. Yeah, Pasadena's fantastic. I love it. I love it up there. Actually, going to be doing a History Con up there here in April, which is History. History Channel is one of the sister channels of A&E. So they're having a really great convention up in Pasadena here, I think in early April. So really great place.
That sounds cool. And you guys are basically doing a lot of events here and there. I believe that your current one is going to be at March 28th at the Mineral Springs in Alton.
That's right. Yeah, Brian Murray and Rochelle Stratton actually put that one together. That's their hometown. Mineral Springs Hotel is actually one of the places that they've been investigating for many years. So, I mean, that's kind of their home base, a place they've investigated for a long time. But funny enough, I mean, before I did Ghost Hunters, when I was working with APRA, I visited Alton many times. So I investigated the McPike Mansion and various places just outside of St. Louis as well as in Alton. And it's kind of cool to be going back there. I can't wait to get there.
Cool. Have you been to the Lemp Mansion?
Absolutely. Actually, one of the for some of the promotional material that you actually see for Ghost Hunters, that was actually shot at the Lemp Mansion.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of a funny story. I know the old show Ghost Hunters investigated the Lemp Mansion years ago, but I investigated that privately with APRA many years ago. But yeah, some of the promotional material you actually see for Ghost Hunters was shot at the Lemp Mansion, so that's kind of a little tidbit.
That's pretty cool. Cool. So let's go ahead and jump on into these questions here, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners want to know the answers to some of these questions. And we always ask this to all of our guests, but when did you become interested in the paranormal? I mean, what got you into it?
Well, in 1995, I lost my oldest brother to cancer, and in 2004, I lost another brother to suicide, so that kind of set me on my journey into the unexplained. I never really had a paranormal experience per se, but I kind of had to grow up really early. I kind of almost, in a sense, grew up in a graveyard because, I was 8 years old when my oldest brother passed away, and my parents were pretty distraught about it, so I spent a lot of time in a graveyard where my brother was buried, and then later my second brother, who unfortunately took his own life. So I had to grow up really quickly. So I always thought about the possible existence of a life after death, and is there a way to document that? And I kind of jumped into various book research, looking into that subject, looking at not only the spiritual side of investigating the paranormal, but also the scientific aspect of it. I always took what Einstein said to heart. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, and I always thought about that as far as like, does the energy within ourselves, which we are all made up of energy, that's a scientific fact. Is there some way that energy, when it escapes our body, does it retain consciousness? And that's something I've always been interested in. So in 2006, I started the American Paranormal Research Association. And before I ever set foot in the field, I started to reach out to medical doctors, engineers, scientists, and I asked them, if I was to investigate the paranormal, what's the best way to do it? How do I remain grounded, not only in scientific principle, but how do I go out there and do this that will be acceptable to the public as well as the scientific community? And they kind of guided me through that. And I've always remained to that principle, and that's what kind of brought me into the current situation with Ghost Hunters. So my story is a little different than others, but I'm all about trying to document the possible existence of a life after death, and I think that's kind of the final frontier in science.
Well, man, I tell you what, I do applaud you for that, because you basically have gone a total different direction over all other investigators that start out. I mean, you're jumping into the scientific principle side of it, where other paranormal investigators really just don't do that. They just jump on into using, well, personally, they're using devices they don't even know how they really work. And you just jumped in and started talking to scientists and doctors. I mean, I applaud you on that. That's awesome.
I appreciate that. It's just kind of my nature as who I am and how I was raised. So like when I jumped into this, I just wanted to keep myself grounded. You know, I didn't want to be fantastical or be something that people could not respect or appreciate, because I think that when you do something based on your own ideas, you can really convolute yourself and really put yourself in a position that you're not going to be able to get much further than that, than, you know, fulfilling your own prophecy, if you will. So I'm all about trying to get out there and remain as credible as possible and really, you know, pushing this field forward.
So out of curiosity, since you are, you know, highly working with scientific principles and leaning toward scientific evidence, were you the one that came up with the idea for the binaural ear or the microphone for the show?
Anything that's on the show, all that equipment kind of runs through not only myself, but we all have a consensus when it comes down to all that. But we consult many professionals, audio engineers, and, you know, again, medical doctors, scientists, engineers. These are people that I talk to on a regular basis, and I always kind of go through these people and ask them what kind of equipment I should be using to be taken seriously. And one of the audio engineers that we speak with, which Grant Wilson, good friend of Grant Wilson's, is someone that recommended we use the binaural. He was one of the people that said, hey, this microphone is going to help you guys change the game when it comes to EVP, because you think about the idea of EVP, electronic voice phenomena, and we have to base all of that not only off of obviously trying to record it and document it, but we have to look at it from the eyewitness testimony aspect, right?
Right.
So there's people in buildings. We go in to help a client. They say they hear disembodied voices. The best way to try and recreate that is by mimicking human hearing. And by using the binaural microphone, not only is that mimicking human hearing, that's giving us supersonic human hearing. So we go into a location and we utilize that device, and we've had some really great results, and we're really proud of it.
Yeah, because you're actually recording below the noise floor, right?
Exactly, absolutely. You know, and there's been many times we did a panel at Alien Con a couple months back, and people asked, they said, well, why don't you guys mimic animal hearing, deer hearing, or various different types of animals? Well, I mean, we don't go talk to animals and say, hey, what kind of disembodied voices did you hear? So that doesn't really add up so much. So we're more so about trying to mimic the eyewitness testimony. And obviously, when it comes down to the fact that we're trying to record EVP or disembodied voices, we want such a clear audio recording that we can take that and actually analyze that through spectrum analysis, right? That's when we take our data and we have that analyzed not only by ourselves, but by a professional from a technical industry that can really break that down frequency by frequency and tell us, is this a straight radio frequency? Is this a cell phone frequency? Or is this something that is mimicking what we think is human voice that can be explained very rationally? But we want to have the cleanest and best data we can have and have that analyzed and tested. That's how we're going to be taken seriously. So that's what we do.
Now, the thing that's always got me baffled, and there's a lot of discrepancy on this, and a lot of people are always debating over it, but the SB7 Spirit Box. Now, yes, I know it is a radio, and you can cycle through the frequencies going forward or backwards. That, I understand that. And you will, without a doubt, get a radio station. You will get music. You will get an announcer. I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. But I believe it's the power of suggestion due to this, for the fact that when you ask it a specific question and you actually get it. Now, what do you think the chances are that just right then and there, a radio announcer is going to say the exact answer that you wanted for your question that you just asked?
Definitely. I understand what you're saying, and I know that's a very big aspect for people talking about the SB7 Spirit Box as well as the other models of the Spirit Boxes that exist out there. But I always say, I don't think it's necessarily impossible that you can have something unexplainable happen through the Spirit Box. I think it's improbable, right? So I think that those things can happen, but the unfortunate aspect of using the SB7 Spirit Box or other ITC devices like that, which I'm not going to completely discount ITC, which we can go into that further if you would like, but here's the thing. If you try and say that you have factual data associated with spirit communication, okay, which many people think that they're having through the SB7 spirit box or their ITC devices, and you take that recording and you take that to someone and say, this is indisputable proof of spirit communication, and you take that to somebody and you say, let's analyze this to prove that it's indisputable proof. If you put that into a spectrum analysis, it's going to completely show up as radio frequencies. You know what that means, Gavin? It is contaminated.
Yeah.
Contaminated recordings will not go anywhere in this field. They can if you want to use them for your own purpose, your own game, your own belief system, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to believe something and you want to think that you're having communication with a spirit that was killed in the 1800s to someone close to you, there's nothing wrong with that. But if we want to further this field and we want to be taken seriously in this field, we cannot utilize those type of recordings. And if we try and do that, it's a very, very dangerous precedent that we are setting, and it's not okay. You know what I mean? So if you want to use that for your own purposes, that's not a problem. But if we want to be taken seriously in this field and we want to do something great and we want to actually further ourselves and step out of the shadow of pseudoscience, it's got to be thrown out.
Yeah. Only thing is when we first actually used it, I don't think it was our first investigation, was it? Pay attention. When we were using the SB7, when we went to Carter's Mill. That was the first one, or a few investigations in, or what?
That was... I think that was the second investigation.
Okay. We were using the SB7.
I know we went out there like 3 or 4 times.
And we were at, in Simpsonia, Kentucky, and we were at the Carter's Mill. Now, there was a wood mill there, a grain mill, and what is the other mill?
It's a wood mill, grain mill. It was a general store, and it was, of course, the proprietor's house.
Right.
It was basically a little town called Carter's Mill, and the town's abandoned, which most of the stuff's torn down now. But back when we went to investigate, it was just like a little town that had become abandoned in the woods.
So what happened is we got the spirit box, and we started asking questions. And it was cycling on through, and it went to total static. And that's like right when I asked the question, because once you get the static, you know that there's nothing there. So I was like, so what type of building are we in? And it came across and said grain mill. I mean, it was kind of distorted, but it said grain mill. So it actually validated the building that we were in. I mean, there's no chance of a radio station actually saying that. Now, to take it even further, there were jugs that were found underneath the porch inside this one building. And one of the investigators said, hey, look, found some jugs. What do you think these were used for? And we weren't asking the spirit box. They were just blankly just asking, one of us, what do you think these jugs were used for? Right across the spirit box came moonshine. And it was sound like a southern black woman, right?
Yes.
That one we could not understand. So then we were like, we're going to check and see if this is actually legit. We're like, whoever said, fine, how are you tonight? And the person said,
fine.
Yep. And that was all during static, no radio frequencies whatsoever.
That's definitely very interesting. Absolutely. I think that, you can have some instances where there are some things you can't explain that may be associated with the history of a location. But again, going into an investigation like that and trying to collect data associated with a haunting, it could always be a very difficult situation when you really start to lean on the historical side of it, right? So when you go into a place and you start to really lean heavily on the history and you start to find something that you think is associated with that history, is that some form of what I would call a placebo effect, right? Are you fulfilling your own thought of what the place may be or what the haunting may be? So with the show and with Ghost Hunters, and I heard your intro, and I heard you mention that there are a lot of the times these shows are kind of scripted or have some kind of setup involved with it. And that's one thing I can tell you about this new reincarnation, at least of the second season of what people are about to see on April 8th of the new Ghost Hunters. It's a completely different show than what people saw back with Taps, right?
Right.
So when we go in now, we aren't necessarily basing our investigation off of the history of a location. You know, we go in based off of eyewitness testimony, and we are implementing equipment that people have never seen before in this field. We are implementing equipment that are directly taken from the scientific community, and we are putting that into our field, not adapting it, not changing it, but taking it and putting it into our world and seeing what happens, right? So we go in now and we say, here's what someone claims to have seen for many years. This is one of the biggest eyewitness claims that have been happening for 15 plus years. If that claim is happening, and if the paranormal is real, you should technically be able to document it with a scientific instrument. And that's the principle that we use on this new season of Ghost Hunters. And people are going to see something they have never seen before, and it is going to completely change the way people look at this field and the mechanics behind it and the way that these entities manifest.
That's going to be cool. It's going to be kind of sort of what me and you talked about a couple days ago about the device that I want to do, and I just need to find someone that can actually help me with the mechanics to actually design the device for, what we talked about.
Right. No, it's definitely, it could be difficult, but, you know, everyone has a really great idea, which what we spoke about, and what you're trying to do is brilliant. And I think that if that can be executed, I think that could be a very useful tool.
Oh, God, yeah, it would be. I mean, it would just, like, boom, there it is, and you can actually see it. And it will map it out for you, which would be phenomenal. So, all right, well, we got a little sidetracked there. Let's see, what are we going to do here?
What was your very first location that you've ever investigated?
Oh, the very first place I investigated was a place in my local hometown of Bakersfield, California.
Ooh, Bakersfield.
And it was a farmhouse that a friend of mine actually worked with many years ago. He said that his family owned this property, and it was a pretty big ranch, and they had some abandoned buildings located on that property that had a lot of paranormal activity. And funny enough, when I initially went in to investigate that place, a lot of the stories they told me were completely bullshit. Excuse my language. I don't know if I could say that or not.
That's all right. We're uncensored.
All right, good. Okay, so they were full of shit. So, so I went in and I started to listen to what they were saying. They claimed to have someone that was, you know, a psychic medium or empathic, but it took a couple times of going back that I figured out that what they were doing was just trying to prank not only myself, but the people I brought with me to investigate. And after going in and doing significant historical research and going back and investigating that location multiple times, the funny thing is it was actually a very active location. But the things that they made up and tried to say were happening there weren't factual, but there were really things happening there. And it's a place I can't use the exact name of the location. It's been torn down since now. This is going back to 2005 that happened, but it was a place I refer to as the Wilkins Ranch. And there was a murder-suicide that took place there, and it was a very active location. It was actually the first place I ever went with the very minimal amount of equipment I had at the time. I was an audio engineer at the time. I worked in the music industry for a number of years, and I brought in a condenser microphone, a audio recording software with a laptop and an interface, and I just set that condenser microphone in the middle of that house by itself for hours and just recorded with this high bit rate. And I actually was able to actually collect some of the best EVP even to this day that I have. And very active location. It's what got me so deep into this field, and knowing that you can go out, you can record things, and you can consult people, and you can really say, hey, look, this is truly unexplainable.
Well, the deal with the microphones, especially using a condenser, those things can actually hear a pin drop, but it can also hear sound that's traveling from a far, far distance. Right?
Absolutely. And that's what makes that piece of equipment so crucial, is the fact that it doesn't matter if they're hearing something from a far distance or not. if you break that down through spectrum analysis, you can really know what that is, right? And not only that, you have to be very aware of your environment, right? The conditions that you're recording in. So if you're using highly sensitive equipment like that, you have to make sure you have a log. You have to talk about contamination. If there is outside contamination, you have to log that. And that's one of the things of going in and using a piece of equipment like that. It makes you more attentive. It makes you more involved in the investigation, and it makes it far more credible.
Yeah, I could always wondered about that because we did an investigation at a place. Oh gosh, where was?
Lay down.
Hey, where was that? I don't want to lay down. I'm not tired.
I'm talking to your dog.
Oh, what was the name of that place that we went to in Owensboro? Now, this was actually something that happened, and I really dug into it. And I mean, we ripped the audio completely apart, and we found out exactly what caused it. But the owner of this house, what was the name of that place?
You're talking about
the Campbell House in Owensboro, Kentucky. And he always stated that in the back room, whenever you go in there and you like play chess or checkers, there's a guy that's up on the fourth floor, will open up his door, and he will yell at you, and then go back in the room and slam the door. And I'm like, well, how often do you hear this? And he's like, oh, I hear it all the time. It's kind of like a residual, but then again, it's not. So we were there. We were in that very same room. I'm like, okay, we're going to go ahead and play checkers. And all of a sudden, we heard what sounded like somebody yelling at us. And I listened to that recording over and over and over again. And I'm thinking to myself, going, okay, well, A, we're in a room that has windows all the way around. And upstairs is through the doorway, down the hall, and that whole area right there, it's very well possible it could have been someone yelling at us. But I started digging into it a little bit more. I went outside. We started walking around, listening. Went back, listened to it again. Kind of mapped out the house in the directional, the way the sound came and hit the recorder. Come to find out, it was somebody in a car blasting the radio 2 blocks away.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That can happen very frequently.
But it sounded like, because it even freaked out the owner. He said, that's the man that yells at me. That sounded exactly like him. But come to find out, it was somebody in a car 2 blocks away playing the radio with the window down.
That's brilliant, though, for you to actually be able to find that information out and provide that to the client to say, hey, look, here's this natural explanation. I mean, that's fantastic. That's a big win.
Yeah, it was crazy. He didn't believe it at first, but we had to prove it to him. But
that's great. It's fantastic.
Well, I mean, that's what you have to do. When in doubt, throw it out. So you have to really dig in and make sure that it is legit. It's validated. Otherwise, the community will eat you alive.
That's right. Absolutely.
Let's see what we got here. What was your most frightening experience on an investigation?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I've been in a lot of situations. I mean, I've done over 200 investigations in some very, very active locations. So it's been very difficult to actually pinpoint an exact experience like that really frightened me. But, one that always sticks out in my mind is I was located in Heritage Junction Park in Santa Clarita, California, which is this location that has over 10 historical buildings that have been gathered and brought to one place to try and preserve them. And I was lucky enough to not only be the first person to investigate those locations, but actually spend the night in them by myself many times, which has been, pretty interesting. But I was in the Newhall Ranch House, which is a location that used to sit in the actual parking lot of a pretty famous place here in Southern California, Magic Mountain, which is a theme park here.
Right, yeah.
And and that ranch house used to actually sit in the parking lot where this now theme park sits. And I was in there one night. The sun was setting, getting ready for the investigation, and I was standing there looking out the window, and I heard a very clear woman's voice just kind of almost yell at me, tell me to go outside. And it was so clear and so present that I thought there was someone in there with me, and no one was there. So It wasn't really anything that's, scary movie-esque or horror movie themed. It was just a very clear disembodied voice that was so present within that location that boggled my mind, and it's still something I think about to this day.
So here's a good question. Disembodied voices. How do you think they can actually do that? I mean, if they are quote-unquote energy, how can energy manifest into a voice?
Well, that's always the universal question, or one of the many universal questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we start to think about the ideology of breaking down the mechanics associated with a haunting, or what I always like to call a formula of a haunting, right? And something I've been working on for many years, going back to 2006, specifically working with a man named Dr. Harry Clore. He's a very good friend of mine. He's the only person in history to receive 2 PhDs simultaneously in any discipline, and he received those in physics and chemistry. And he's been a partner of mine for many years. We did a show on the Science Channel in 2014, and him and I really got together going back to 2010 and really thinking about, okay, if entities exist, if ghosts are real, and they are manifesting, how do they do so? And that goes from, as you're talking about now, disembodied voices, to physical manipulation of objects, to physical manifestations as well. So I wanted to start to document the environmental conditions associated with hauntings or supposed hauntings.
Right.
So we go into locations and we start to try and document virtually what's associated with the Farmer's Almanac, which a lot of people, I'm sure, listening to this show know what that is. And if you don't, it's all the environmental conditions associated with locations. Not only that, but moon phases, tide charts, things associated with the environment,
right,
and the Earth's magnetic pull, things of that nature. And going into a location and starting to now not only concentrate on trying to document unexplained phenomena, but recording the environment associated with a location, you start to see trends, right? And sometimes you start to see certain trends that are associated with EVP or disembodied voices. So, for instance, when we were at the Duff Green Mansion in the last season of Ghost Hunters on A&E, Mustafa and I were downstairs investigating this report of this Confederate soldier that had a missing leg sitting next to a fireplace.
Oh, wow. And
people seeing this gentleman on multiple occasions. And we were down there, and we started to have pressure spikes. The barometric pressure within that environment started to change drastically. We did extensive baseline sweeps. We had graphs pointed out and printed out that said what exactly the environment was, and we started to see some very big pressure changes. And upon looking at that graph and seeing the environmental change, we actually were able to take the time code at that exact moment and go over our audio on a binaural microphone, by the way, which we talked about earlier. And we recorded a voice saying "my left leg" very clearly at the exact time there were pressure changes. So that's very interesting. So now we start to talk about the mechanics of hauntings and disembodied voices, like you were just asking. Is there in some way that when there are environmental changes such as a barometric pressure change and we record an EVP that cannot be explained through spectrum analysis, is in some way that barometric change giving them energy to speak? I think it's a possibility and something we have to look at further.
And that would also go for the same thing as, I mean, I don't understand how this is even possible, but a lot of people have said that they have witnessed it. I haven't for the 7 years that we've been investigating, but there was people that actually have seen physical, we're talking full-bodied apparition where you could actually touch them and that they're, real, but they're not. There was this couple that was sitting in the parking lot at, was it Kmart?
I believe so.
It was Kmart. And there was a knock on their window. And the old man turns around and rolls down and he's like, yes. And they wound up asking something. I forgot what it was. They were asking what time does Kmart open? And the old man basically looked at his wife like, is this person for real? And turned back around. They were gone. This person was solid. He said that they were solid, as in like you and I. Colorful and everything. Now, how is that possible?
Well, that's where it gets very interesting, Gavin. This is where we start to really make the breakthroughs that we do in this next season of Ghost Hunters. And again, I'm going to reference your intro on your tape here, is the fact that there are very many shows out there that are very scripted, right? They are very set up. So I'm going to tell you right now, Gavin, I've been doing this for almost 16 years. I've put my credibility on the line. I've worked with some of the most brilliant scientists, medical doctors, and engineers in this world. I've been very lucky enough to work with those people. And I, in no way, shape, or form, would sacrifice my credibility for a fucking TV show.
Right.
I'm saying that right now. Again, I'm sorry to say that on this. Don't mean to cuss too much, but when it comes down to the fact that this new season of Ghost Hunters, I called those people and I said, hey, if ghosts are real and they are manifesting and they are the physical form that people claim them to be, just like you're talking about with this situation in Kmart.
Yeah.
If they are real, how would I be able to document them? And I was provided a piece of equipment that has been used by the digital imaging scientific community for many years, going back to the early 2000s, that is recording a very particular type of matter, a very particular type of particular matter, and has been looked at and documented for many years. And I was told by a good friend of mine in the community that said, this is the way they would manifest if it was real. We took that piece of equipment, we put it into location, and we have results, and we now understand in some way. We can't say completely because there's not an expert in this field. I think one day there will be experts.
Right.
But at this point, there are not experts. But we have made a tremendous breakthrough in the fact that we think we know the type of particular matter that is associated with the manifestation of entities and how they show themselves to people.
Oh, man, that's going to turn the tides of the paranormal field, that is for sure. Can't wait to see that. That's going to be April 8th?
April 8th, yeah, April 8th at 8 p.m. on A&E. It's a 2-hour premiere.
Ooh.
Our typical time slot is going to be Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on A&E. But we are starting with a 2-hour premiere just before Celebrity Ghost Stories, which is another great show, by the way. But we are coming out, and I'll tell you, and like with the first season of what people saw at Ghost Hunters, we came together. Grant Wilson put this team together, and we came and we had to work through the kinks of not working together. I mean, you got to think about this. We're people throughout the country, right? We're all from different teams. We all come from different walks of life, different ideas when it comes to the paranormal. We had to work through that. But now with what you're about to see starting April 8th, it changes the game. And I know it upsets a lot of people, and I just don't understand it. You know what I mean? Because everyone's got an opinion, which everyone is entitled to completely. Right. Everyone has their own opinion, and that's okay. If you want to use certain types of equipment, that's okay. If you want to believe a certain way, that's okay. But here's the thing. If we want to be taken seriously by the public and by the scientific community, we have to stop using these pieces of garage tech. We have to stop. You know what I mean? We are. What do they say is the definition of being crazy or insane? Is like doing the same thing over and over and over without results, and that's what we're doing right now.
Right.
That's what we're doing. And there's been so many of these shows. One particular network that I will not name at this point has been doing nothing but putting the same shit out over and over. And if we want to change that, we have to do something new and different. And people are threatened by it in some way, which I don't understand, because we're not trying to tell you it doesn't exist. We're trying to tell you it does exist, and that we have proof that helps that even further. I don't understand why people just don't get behind it and want to be part of it, because it's helping everybody as a whole. It's not detrimental to the field. It's not detrimental to your belief system. It's actually aiding and benefiting what people believe, and I just don't understand it sometimes.
Yeah. One thing I like, well, that particular network you're talking about contacted me, but that's a different story. One thing I like to do, and it has nothing to do with, radio frequencies or the SP7. Just use a regular, run-of-the-mill digital tape recorder. You're not going to be recording any radio frequencies or anything. But my question is, what do you think the chances are that when you're using a digital recorder, it's actually going to pick up the internal electronic mechanisms inside the device, or possibly maybe electrical interference within the device that will contaminate your recordings?
That is extremely possible, and a very brilliant thing that you asked there, Gavin, because that is a very strong possibility that can happen. But the only way to determine that it's not going to be contaminated or being picked up by an external source is by spectrum analysis, and by breaking that down frequency by frequency. And for a majority of the time, even like a trained ear like yourself, I mean, you've been doing this for how many years, and you understand what EVP sounds like or what something typical sounds like. You'll know right away that you're hearing something that's contaminated. You'll hear blips within the audio. Mm-hmm. You'll hear you'll hear it. You'll hear frequencies coming within the recording. But the only way to be 100% sure and to know that you're dealing with something that is unexplainable is mm-hmm. through spectrum analysis, and that is consulting a audio engineer or some people that are out there that have worked in the audio industry or in other various technical industries can really break that down and look at it through spectrum analysis and break you down a recording telling you stray radio frequency, cell phone frequency, so on and so forth. But yes, that's the best way to do it. You can be contaminated through just an audio recorder. For instance, whenever you have, say, a digital audio recorder, right? Mm-hmm. And if someone has their cell phone on, and they're close to it, you'll hear that beep, 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 beep. It sounds like almost like a Morse code coming through. Mm-hmm. That's contamination right there. Yeah. And you'll know it right away. And you yourself, you listen to that stuff all the time. You'll know what it is. But the only way to be sure is through spectrum analysis.
Wonder if they make any portable spectrum analysis systems for possibly software for like a laptop or something like that.
They do, absolutely. The easiest way to break it down, and not in a full sense, but a very easy way to break down spectrum analysis would be through a program like Adobe Audition, right?
Okay.
There's a spectral frequency feature within that program that'll give you a minimal spectrum analysis, but you can really see. It'll give you all the megahertz and kilohertz, all that stuff. It'll show you exactly where those bands are coming from mm-hmm. and give you a good enough explanation as to what you're dealing with, definitely.
Okay, yeah, I've actually used that a couple times. There was one point in time when we were filming for Truth or Legends in your hometown. That's the show that we're filming. Season 1 last year, we got an EVP at this one particular place with our first team in Wisconsin. And, I mean, it's clear as day. The guy is actually saying his last name. I kind of was thinking, going, well, I don't know. I mean, it sounds human. I mean, it really does. So I wanted putting it into Adobe Audition, and basically what you're talking about, the spectrum analysis, I didn't know that's what that was, but I did see a type of, not really a graph, but I could see what human speech looked like and what that EVP was. It did not match.
Absolutely, exactly. And that's going to give you a very good idea. I mean, that's going to be sometimes even enough to really determine what you're dealing with. And you can see human speech mm-hmm. versus the voice. I mean, you'll definitely, even when people whisper, you'll be able to see that. So yeah, I mean, that's a great starting point for people that want to get into that aspect of going further into their own evidence. But again, you can really see the difference between human speech and something you're not really sure what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I didn't even know that's what that was. I was just using it because I saw it. It said Spectrum on it, and when I clicked on it, I was looking at it, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Now, basically, personally, I thought it looked cool because it was colorful.
Hey, the colorful aspect is a nice added bonus, but it actually does give you very reliable information that definitely does help your investigation.
Yeah, beyond the colorfulness of it, that's when I noticed I saw human speech, and then I saw this EVP, and I looked at it, and I was just going. I had to take a double take because I was just like, huh? And I thought maybe it was something with the pitch, so I started going in and messing around with some pitches, and I did some cleanup of it, and I'm just like, it's still there, but it doesn't match human speech. So I'm like, okay, well, and that's usually what I've been telling people. It's like, yeah, I got this software that enables me to tell that if it's human or if it's a spirit. And they're like, what's it called? Well, I can't tell you.
Exactly, and that's interesting. That's where we start to go further, right?
Right.
So it's not just showing up to a location and saying, hey, I got this really interesting SLS figure, or I got this really interesting spirit box recording. Now you can actually show people factual data to go, look, these are the frequencies associated with what I recorded, and look, it doesn't match human speech, but it sounds like a human. What the hell is it?
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the SLS. I know there's a lot of discrepancy on that, and some people use that as factual evidence. And yes, I understand that it can pick up pieces of furniture, it can pick up a vacuum cleaner, it can pick up a plant. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because, now see, this is weird. Everybody has their issues with these certain types of devices. Like we started off with the SB7, and I told you what we wound up getting. Well, the SLS camera. We were at a place, Weldon Manor, in Central City, Kentucky. Have you heard of it?
I am not familiar, no.
Okay. It's this big, huge building. It was used back in the days of railroad. They turned it into, it was like a brothel, apartments. But there's this long hallway, and the owner said, well, this is the portal hallway. And I'm like, okay, now why are you calling it a portal hallway? He goes, well, because this is a long hallway. There were 2 doors, and he basically thinks that you go in one, you come out the other. Well, theoretically, you kind of are. There's a room in between. So what he ended up doing was pulling the doors completely off the hinges. Now, this is just a hallway with 2 door openings. That's it. There's nothing on the walls, nothing on the floor, nothing. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and test this out. So I set up my DVR camera. Right above that, I put the, we don't have an SLS. We just use a regular Kinect camera. So I put it up on a tripod right above the IR camera. And right above that, a full spectrum camera. I run the line. We are about 175 feet from where this Kinect camera is. So we are not there to contaminate it. There's nobody else in the building. And we're sitting at base camp. And all of a sudden, I kid you not, I have never in my life have seen what a portal looks like. But the camera started shifting. It started rotating up, rotating down, rotating up, rotating down. Like it was shifting by itself. And at the time, I had a lot of people that were like, oh, well, you altered that. I'm like, really? It's 1 frame a second. Because normally it records at 29 or 25 or whatever. For some weird reason, when it was recording the screen capture program, it recorded at 1 frame a second. I don't know why. I'm truly grateful it did, because while we were sitting there, we saw a little dot show up, and then it popped into a 7-foot-tall stick figure that waved to us.
Wow, very interesting.
I have to show you it.
Interesting. I was actually, I was contacted by Tech World Magazine in 2014 to talk about the SLS and the Kinect, the tech behind it, right,
Mm-hmm.
and how it's being adapted and utilized within the paranormal field. And I thought it was always very interesting because, I mean, that's one thing that this field has to do, right? We have to adapt technology from other industries if we're going to try and do anything, right, and trying to find data associated with ghosts or hauntings.
Right.
And the biggest thing to me, and like I've always said, is the fact that if you take Kinect or you take SLS and you put it within a situation where that piece of equipment is trying and built with AI to find people, that's the purpose. That's why it was built, right? So if you take it and you point it down a long hallway and now you lose depth, right? There's no depth anymore. It's only seeing blackness. It's only seeing darkness. That device is naturally within its own AI and naturally within its own environment and the way it's supposed to work, it's going to find a figure. That's what it's going to do. And what that's going to do is that's going to provide a false positive in every way, shape, or form. And like I said, I've said this before publicly, I think that the SD7 and Spirit boxes or other versions of the Spirit box and other pieces of ITC, which not all of them, not all ITC, is the perfect example of audio pareidolia, and the SLS is a perfect example of visual pareidolia, because this device is designed to find figures. That's why it's there. And it's going to find figures. So unfortunately, if it's going to be taken credibly, of course, it can do things that might be interesting. It's not improbable for it to find something that's paranormal per se, and it might correlate with something you're doing. But unfortunately, if that's going to be taken seriously, it has to be thrown out. It's contaminated. It's meant to find false positives. It's not meant for paranormal investigation. It's meant to aid people within playing a video game and trying to make sure that they are coordinated within that game, and trying to make sure that they are balanced and a virtually a stick figure to make sure that game is playing according to its AI and according to its coding. So anytime you throw that into a situation where you're in the pitch black, you're throwing infrared all around a room, you're completely contaminating the device, unfortunately.
Even though there wasn't really a quote-unquote time, I mean, because we've had it on basically down that way for, I don't know. When did he pop up? He popped up in 45 minutes or something?
Yeah, the owner was even there when we were sitting there.
Yeah, we were talking to the owner and everything, and I was telling him what we did down that hallway, and it was probably about, I want to say 45 minutes, and all of a sudden, boom, that character popped up. So, I mean, I can understand what you're saying. It could have picked it up.
Something interesting could happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it could have picked something up within the first 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds, but 45 minutes?
Well, sometimes it takes a while to map out. You know what I mean? Again, especially when there's a lack of depth, right? It's going to keep triggering and recycling and recycling and recycling, trying to find that depth because it's gridding. It's creating a grid, as everyone knows. So if it's creating that grid and it's not getting there, and say that there's people flashing a flashlight down that area or pointing infrared down there, it's going to change. It's going to recycle. It's going to change the way it's trying to map. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's improbable, but, you never know. You never know. But from a standpoint of if we're trying to take factual data and we're trying to move forward within this field, which I think is a very, very big thing. Again, there's paratourism. There's people that are hobbyists within this field, and that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes when I talk about the advancement of the field and I talk about the science aspect, people get offended by that. I don't mean to be offensive. I don't mean to take away from people's experiences. But when it comes down to the fact that we're going to move forward, we have to provide factual data. And unfortunately, devices like the SLS, devices like the Spirit Box, devices like these various apps that exist out there, it's just not going to work. It's not going to provide us any information to move forward. But again, doesn't mean that you can't have an experience with it.
Right. And one of the crazy things that happened. See, what's really odd and bizarre is, we were first starting out. We never really done this stuff, and I call us, beginner's luck because we've got the freaking the best, evidence or something like that. I was using a regular high 8 Sony Handycam. We're talking about the cassettes, right? And we were once again at Carter's Mill. It was kind of foggy, or the fog was rolling on in, and I had the camera on a tripod locked down, but I was panning with it. And I swear to this day, we captured what looks like an apparition running. You can see the leg hike up and the arm go back.
Wow, that's great. When I first started in the field, all I had was tape. I had a high 8, I had a DV camera, so I always loved those mediums. I love tape. That's one of my favorite pieces of mediums you can have, so that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and you can't alter it. You can't do any of that stuff because it's already on tape. How are you going to alter it?
Exactly. I know. I miss those days. Absolutely.
But we wound up getting that, and then back to the Weldon Manor, there was a loud bang. We didn't know what caused it, but Paula turned right around and fired off, taking pictures in that general direction. And then when we looked at the picture when we got home, what we saw totally amazed us. We can see the little girl. Her name is, what was her name? Maggie? Weldon Manor. Maggie?
Well, yeah, it's Maggie.
Maggie. You can see her. You can see her face. You can see her hair. You can see what she's wearing.
What, on my camera?
Yeah, when you took the picture.
Oh, yeah. I'm just one of
And
those
then
people
you can
that
see her brother. But then originally we thought it was a demon that was in the center with their its arms around the kids. But then we come to find out, we wound up talking to a medium, and she said, no, that's actually an old woman, like a grandmother, with a beehive hairdo.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And we have the photo. She took it. We always show it whenever we do Ghostology 101 at like events and stuff. And we always show that, and people are just like, oh my God, is that real? And I'm like, unfortunately, yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm a ghost trap.
You're a ghost magnet?
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it is?
Well, it always seems like every time I'm the one that takes the picture, I'm the one that grabs stuff.
All right. Well, I guess so. Okay, so have you ever worked with a strange or weird case or location that you really didn't have an answer to?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Many places over the years that I go in and I try and find some kind of natural explanation, right? Like be that natural infrasound or maybe even sometimes high EMF, right? Which can really mess with people and go into an aspect of giving people temporal lobe activity where it starts to make people hallucinate in a sense. And there's been a lot of times where I've gone into places, one particular in Hayward, California, not far out of Oakland, California, called the McConaughey Estate, that had a lot of disturbances over the years. And they did public tours there, and a lot of people were being affected in that location. And my first thought was, is it, natural infrasounds? Is it bad wiring or high EMF? Or even as far as going back to the possibility of this, original Victorian wallpaper, which a lot of times was put in with poisons, various poisons, are people being affected by that? Even testing the wallpaper could never find a natural explanation. But a lot of things going on there, you know what I mean? A lot of things affecting people, and only a very particular demographic of people, which I always found to be interesting. So that's one location I can never have an explanation for. Have some really interesting data and evidence associated with the place, but it's always hard to pinpoint, is it really haunted? But a lot of stuff going on there, and I can never find a natural explanation for.
Now, to try to find a natural solution for a location from like doing possibly like a base reading, would you use a tri-field meter, because it actually can detect radio waves, microwaves, electric and static? I mean, those are basically all man-made articles there.
Sure, absolutely. Going forward, though, I would recommend never using the original tri-field. That thing is far too contaminated by other devices. Going forward, you would have to use the new model of tri-field. I don't know if you've used that one yet or have seen that one, but it's far more shielded. Going back to the original tri-field, the more analog one, no matter what preset you would put it in, say microwave or radio, all that EMF, all of it, it would be influenced by other devices. But now with this new, the digital one, way more shielded, fantastic. You can go in and really, really pinpoint exactly the causes, like you said, from radio to microwave to all of it. So if you're going to use a tri-field meter going forward, use the new version, the digital version. The old one, I'd take that out of the kit, get rid of it.
Now you're talking about, see, the one that I have is the tri-field 100 XE or something like that. Is that the one you're talking about? Or are you talking about the blue
digital
one?
Is that the digital version? It's got the actual digital readout on it.
Oh, no, I don't have that one.
Oh, yeah. See, I don't remember the various model numbers associated with it, but the new ones, I can't remember the model number. I can't tell you, but it is a completely digital version, and there's the actual digital readout on it. Fantastic device, man. I mean, that thing is top-notch, very realistic, very well shielded, and will definitely give you answers, especially when it comes to the natural aspects.
I'll have to check that out. Let's see. Now, this is a question that Paula usually asks, and she dealing with the dog. Do you believe some people are more perceptive to the paranormal activities than others?
I do, absolutely. I think that there's a natural aspect within each and every one of us that makes us susceptible to different energies, if you will. And I think that there are people that are more open to it than others, and I think that's a real thing. I always say, even though I call myself a natural skeptic, even though I'm very, scientific in principle and try to remain that way within this field, I think the best tool you can have is yourself,
right?
Your natural instincts, and as well as your gut. I think that very well that's the best tool you can have, and utilizing that with technology, utilizing that with a scientific principle, you're going to get way further than anyone else can, and I think it has to be utilized.
Well, here's a good one for you. When you go into these investigations, do you ever feel like your equilibrium is off?
Oh, yeah. There's been many times I've experienced that. It's different in each location. Obviously, you can have places that are just not completely level, that the foundation and the structure itself have what the original ghost hunters called a funhouse effect.
Right.
And people within the paranormal field call the funhouse effect. That can really throw you for a loop. But then again, there are environmental conditions that change at times that make you feel off. And the equilibrium within yourself. And sometimes you can pick up on that. And that's sometimes just your natural instinct as to tell you that the environment's changing in some way. And I think that when you start to utilize that and you start to actually document the environmental conditions associated with a place, which I think should be crucial and should be protocol for any paranormal investigator out there. If you're out there investigating hauntings and ghosts, if you're not documenting the environmental conditions associated with those locations, you are missing a huge opportunity, and you are just walking blind in the dark at that point. Because say you do have a spirit box or an SLS, and you believe those things are providing information to you, right? And you think that those things are actually giving you evidence. If you're able to document that with environmental changes within the location, now you're starting to get somewhere, right? But if you're not trying to correlate those devices, you're just walking blindly in the dark, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, the reason why I asked that question, because Paula, sometimes she winds up getting a headache or she feels nauseous afterwards. She actually had to lay down one time at a location on the ground, and when she left the building, she actually felt better. Now, the thing with her, she's a sensitive and an empath, so when she goes in, she can actually sense. And what else do you do?
Well, I mean, I can trigger point certain rooms being more something unpleasant, more cheerful. I can feel emotions.
Well, that's an empath, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think that's very much a very real thing within not only this field, but in everyday life. I think that everyone has that within them, just a matter of how they utilize it or if they're open to it. I think everyone has it. Empathy within a human is, in my opinion, almost the basics of humanity. Like being a person that is open to not only experiencing your own life, but open to the life experience itself. Everyone should have empathy and being empathic in some way. And unfortunately, a majority of people just don't open themselves to that. And the few that do are just a little more on the edge with the spirit world, if you will, or more open to the fact that they are experiencing something we can't quite explain. I think that can be a very big tool, especially when you go in investigating locations and trying to document that with instrumentation, right? And using that within an investigation can really work. And unfortunately, a lot of people close themselves off to that. And I think that that's detrimental sometimes.
Okay. How do you feel of today about the people being more open to the paranormal compared to 20 or 25 years ago? Do you believe the shows have helped us to be more open on the subject?
I absolutely think the show's really opened up more belief into the field, or being more open to it. Sometimes more in a dangerous way and in a bad way, unfortunately, because unfortunately some of the shows out there now that set a precedence are just, it's not good, man. It's just not good. You know, like I always say, everywhere it is completely, virtually, absolutely impossible that everywhere you go is demonic. It's absolutely impossible. Yep. It's completely impossible.
Well,
I mean, give me a goddamn break. Like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously, are you serious right now, dude? Like, and he knows who I am. He knows who I am. And I'm saying it right now. He knows who I am. I've been on his show many times. Like, dude, give it up, man. Like, seriously, stop it. It's embarrassing. You're making us all look bad, dude. Like, it's such a joke, such an embarrassment. Stop. Seriously, man. Everywhere you go is not demonic and evil. It's impossible.
Exactly. And the thing, besides that, they're also pissing off a lot of the locations all around. I can give you an example. McPike Mansion. There is nothing evil there. There is nothing demonic there. But
well, then why the hell are people watching this shit anymore, man? Like, seriously, why? Because it's been on TV for as long as it has? Like, what are you getting out of it now? Just to laugh at it? Like, what's the point?
30% of the
like, seriously, why?
loves fear.
No, they don't love fear. They just love to be entertained. A lot of people want to be scared. They want to be...
They love fear.
Yeah, well, I guess.
They love fear. 30% of the population
I think you're right.
loves fear.
Well,
They want their own poltergeist experience is basically what it is.
Well, it's kind of like when we went and did that event with Keith Age and Rick Hayes at the Doss House. I had a group of people... Keith Age had a group of people, Rick Hayes had a group of people, and Paula had a group of people. And her group was like, I want to see a ghost. Are we going to see a ghost? I hope we see a ghost.
I had teenagers. I'm going to just let you up front. I had teenagers, and I was just like, I was about ready to put a bed sheet on and run through the freaking hallway. That's how desperate these teenagers wanted to see a ghost.
That would have been fun.
No, I get it. But I will say this, Gavin. I seriously, man, like, I'm a huge proponent of this field, man. I've been doing this for going on my 16th year now, you know, and I do not claim myself to be an expert. I've been on multiple shows. I've done my own show on Science Channel in 2014, The Unexplained Files. I've done that. I'm on Ghost Hunters now. I've done another show that's on another network that I'm sure you're very familiar with. And this has got to stop, man. Like, seriously, like, I get it. Like, it was very entertaining. It was great. It was new. It was exciting. It was raw. It was like something to watch. But this is not real.
Yeah.
They are using these pieces of equipment, and everyone is on board with it because do you think that they're actually in there investigating? Absolutely not. They go in there for 1 or 2 hours. They use these devices that give them instant results, quote-unquote results, false positives. And they walk out and they give you a 42-minute TV show, and it's bullshit, man. It's complete, utter bullshit. This is such a dangerous precedent that they're setting, and it's making everyone look very, very weak and making us look like we don't know what the hell we're doing. And if we're ever going to overcome this and be taken seriously, not only by the public in a larger scale, but the scientific community, that kind of stuff's got to stop, man.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I can actually go ahead and say this now, but we were filming for the Paranormal Journey into the Unknown, when was it? 3 years ago? And we went to a particular location, and we rolled up in just a truck and a box trailer. And we started unloading and everything. Well, the owner came on out, and he's like, well, where's your other trucks? Isn't there supposed to be like a B crew or something coming over here to set stuff up? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he proceeded to tell me that the show that came over there, they had a B crew that came through. They set up all the DVR cameras except for 2. They, on the 3rd camera, they had the camera placed, but they didn't have the wire run or the cable. And then the other one was to place another camera. And I'm like, really now? He goes, yeah. So you guys don't have a B crew? And I'm like, no, we do it all. And he was thoroughly impressed that we did everything ourselves right then and there. And he said, yeah, I applaud you guys. He goes, I'm so shocked. He goes, first that other crew came on in, and then the stars came. One hooked up the camera, one ran the cable, and that was it. Then they did their investigation. So it basically looks like that they were there doing all this work, which is not true at all. And
that's the unfortunate reality, man. That's how it goes a lot of times with this stuff, unfortunately. And, that's why, like, the days, like, when I came on to Ghost Hunters, like, that's a big thing for me when I came on. And they said, how would you like to investigate on this show? I said, get rid of the DVR system. Just get it out of here. Like, just go with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and nothing wrong with the DVR system. I'm like, I used the DVR system for many, I used a DVR system that recorded to VCR tape for many years. Like, I did that for a long time. But if you're going to be realistic, at least with trying to do a television production side of it, you have to get in there and do your best to document it with pieces of equipment that are going to do it, not by sitting there for hours and trying to make someone else set up a DVR system just like you're talking about.
Right.
And that's, again, another situation where these people come in and they're not really doing it. You know what I mean? They're just not really doing it. And that's sad. If you knew what you were doing going in to investigate the paranormal, just like you do when you guys come in and do your production, you know how to set up the DVR system.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to have a very strategic time frame to fill it out, right? And go out there and do this. So if you're going to go out there and realistically do it, use it by your own means. Know what you're doing and know how to use the stuff, and don't fake it to the people. It's just not right.
Oh yeah. I mean, when we go and do our show, we're there for a weekend. So, and what we do is we wind up crushing all that into a hour-long show. But the thing is, we do everything. Paula goes ahead and runs the cables to all the cameras, and I'm setting up base camp. So we kind of got this little team thing going. Each person has their own specific job. But the thing is, what you're talking about, getting rid of the DVR, the only problem I would run into is you're going to be using static cameras, but then you have to rely on batteries, and you got to make sure that you have enough juice to keep those cameras going.
Yeah, no, it's a very very big thing you have to think about. But luckily now with lithium ion technology and various batteries you can get, we can run infrared 4K cameras for days now on batteries that are connected to it. So we're very lucky to do that, and eliminating the cord pulling and the cord running and base camp aspect, it actually makes it more strategic, and you're utilizing that in a different way, and then you're actually minimizing your time by going in there and actually giving you more investigation than the setup, which is lucky. But I mean, again, there's a lot of options out there when it comes to batteries where you can run for days with some of these cameras, and you have a higher quality. Some of these, some of these CCTV cameras, you can get some nice 4K quality out of it. You can get some nice recordings, but now you can go and record camera by camera with high resolution, with crazy battery capacity, and you can do some really great stuff that not only looks really great for collecting data, but also would work really great for your show as well.
Yeah, but the only thing is say like you got a 16 camera DVR system, that means you have to have 16 static cameras that are going to be running off of SD cards. That's a lot of SD cards to dump footage.
That's a lot, but you never really need 16 cameras. That's going to be a tough review, I'll tell you what.
Well, I mean, if you're in a place and you're investigating half of it, you really want to know what's going on in the other half. I mean, what happens if you're in a particular room doing an EVP session, and 4 doors down, there's a chair that's moving, and if there's a camera in there, you can actually capture that chair moving.
You're right, Gavin, you're right. But I'll tell you right now, in my experience, again, this is just my experience, not to speak for everybody, but I think that the human connection, that people being in a location, trying to converse, trying to speak with the said entities or the said phenomena there, that is where you get your most data, not by static cameras or not by DVR cameras. I can't tell you. I mean, I can't even give you an example in my 16 years of investigating the paranormal where I had a DVR camera capture anything. Everything that I ever captured was either within the process of trying to communicate or within the process of having or trying to have that human connection. Because, again, if we go back to the basic fundamentals of what we're trying to do here, we're trying to document, if we think that these are humans or these are entities of people that are deceased and that their energy retains consciousness after death, what better way to document that than to have human connection and speak to them?
Well, the one thing is it's kind of crazy. It happened to us at the Monroe House in Hartford City, Indiana. I set down a REM pod, not a regular REM pod. This is just a straight-up 360 motion detecting pod. So it doesn't go off with static. It goes off with motion. And once you set it down, you count to 5 and walk away. So that way it triggers. It's good. Me and Paula were already into the kitchen, going into the living room when it went off. But we're thinking, okay, well, it's probably resetting itself or whatever. So I go out to base camp, which was actually in the trailer on the property. Me and Matt Benton were in the trailer, and Paula and the other investigator were in the living room. So nobody was around this specific area where the DVR camera was. Matt was watching the DVR camera inside the trailer, base camp. And all of a sudden, I was telling him about the pod that we put down, that we don't use static pods. We use 360 motion. And I'm like, look, there it goes. See, it's going off. He goes, yeah, it is. And all of a sudden, the camera moved. So right when that motion was detected, the DVR camera moved. And he freaked out. He goes, is somebody moving the camera? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I go, they're in the living room and we're here. He's like, he picked up the radio and he's like, hey, are you guys and it's coming through my radio because I had it on me. And he's like, oh, crap. So he basically runs into the house, and he's like, you guys were here all this time? And Paula and the other investigator were like, yeah, we've been sitting in the living room. He's like, holy shit. So he runs on down the hall, slams into the camera. Now, here's the thing. When we set up our DVR camera, since I am a recording artist, I don't use tripods. I actually use a mic stand with the huge metal base, the round disc. Now, those things... Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, those things are hard to tip over. He slammed into it, and the camera swivels and then stops and goes back to where it was. While we were sitting in base camp, this camera actually moved like somebody hit it. So he comes on in there. He's trying to debunk it. I mean, he's stepping on a cable. He's rolling the cable with his foot. I wrap it around the pole, and I have some slack that goes on out to the DVR system, which is out in the trailer. So basically, the DVR system is off the property. We just have the line going to the camera, and it's wrapped around the pole. So nobody can actually move that unless they physically touch it. But the deal is, it's really blew my mind. If we didn't have that DVR on, we would have never known that camera moved, which it did. And that right there was the best evidence of that night, wasn't it?
That's the best evidence we've had all since.
Yeah, there you go.
That's great. Fantastic.
So that really kind of blew my mind.
Got a last question for you.
Uh-oh.
Since we had talked about the subjects about people and connectivity with spirits, do you believe somebody can enter a location that carries negativity on them, as a negative personality, okay? And it deceives the location?
Yeah, I think there's a show that probably documents that pretty well. So I think that's probably what you're getting.
Well, I'm just getting at,
You walked into that one.
Well, I'm just getting at the concept of you actually have, no, I mean as in a person in general can be a negative to the location, as in...
And they just turn the whole location negative.
The whole location negative, and you don't get anything, but everybody else, that person could walk away, go to get sandwiches or something at the local restaurant or something, or runs to McDonald's or something, and you're there by themselves, or you're
everything is okay,
and everything is okay, and then we start getting you get certain, you know, the atmosphere changes.
Now, you do know that's similar to what they call a poltergeist, where all of a sudden there's a family in the house, they're having a lot of activity, and then once a particular person leaves, everything dies. That's basically almost the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, that's a very much a credible phenomenon that you're talking about. I think that happens, oh, man, probably more often than people realize. You know what I mean? I don't think that doesn't even have to do necessarily with spiritual phenomena. I think that can do with somebody's own energy within themselves. You know what I mean? Some people just have that within them and can control an environment. You know, you can talk about the idea of psychic vampires and things like that. You know what I mean? That's a whole other subject we can talk about one day. But I think that there are people that can control an environment like that. Absolutely. And I think that you probably see that on one of the shows more often than not. And it's crazy to me. You know what I mean? Like, people go in and you know the term manifest destiny. You know that whole thing?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
I think that's when people create their own self-fulfilling prophecy. You know what I mean? People go into a location, they have expectations, and they fulfill that in a way.
Oh, okay.
I think sometimes there are people out there that want negative interaction, and that might be associated with things they might not have dealt with in their own life, or they're having a bad day or a bad year or a bad month, and they want to go in and kind of let the steam off a little bit, and unfortunately it can influence other people and influence environments. And I think that that's a real thing sometimes. And I absolutely think what you're saying is real. And I think that it does happen more than not. And I think that, the probability of you walking into a location and everything being haunted by demons and whatnot, I don't think that happens very often, but someone made 200 episodes off of it. So we'll do the math there.
Oh, man. Well, I tell you what, we have had a great time having you on the show, and right now is your time to actually let our listeners know where they can find you, website address, events that you're going to be appearing at, and, of course, plugs for Ghost Hunters on A&E, but the floor is yours.
Thanks, Gavin. Yeah, no, absolutely. You can find anything I do at brandonjalvis.com, and all my social media is on that website. Just go to the very bottom of the page. It's got my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. But again, guys, I say this, and I say this wholeheartedly. April 8th, 8 p.m. on A&E, 2-hour premiere of the new Ghost Hunters. It is not the old Ghost Hunters. This is not Taps. We are not Taps. This is new. This is fresh. We are doing things outside of the box. We are doing them scientifically. We are doing them very meticulously. And you are going to see something that is going to change the field. Well, I mean, again, this is not against what people believe. This is going to aid what we're doing. We have finally had a breakthrough where we recorded very specific data associated with how entities manifest, the exact particular matter associated with it from a scientific perspective. And I think people are going to be very excited, and I hope that everyone's open to the idea. I hope people join us and see the show, and we move forward, and let's step out of the shadow of pseudoscience. Let's do it. Let's do this right, guys. Let's be realistic. Let's be accepted by the public. Let's be accepted by the scientific community. No more pseudoscience.
Wow, that sounds good. I can't wait to watch it. And everybody know that next week, March 18th, we're going to be joined by Brandon's partners in crime, Daryl Martson. And I know I'm going to screw this one up, but on March 25th, we're going to have Mustafa, how do you say his last name? Gadalari, yep. So everybody stick around and join us on March 18th and the 25th. We're going to continue on with our podcast, interviewing and talking with A&E's Ghost Hunters. So, hey, Brandon, we really appreciated you being on the show, and I had a blast. How about you?
Oh, I had an awesome time.
We learned a lot. We picked his brain.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it, Gavin. Seriously, this has been a lot of fun. Appreciate the time, hanging out, talking. I'm very passionate about this field. Anytime I get a chance to do this, I love it, and thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. I'm very happy that you took time out from your very busy schedule. So I know you guys are all very busy, and I can't wait to sit down for 2 hours and check out the new Ghost Hunters on A&E on April 8th. Boy, I feel like I'm like marketing you all of a sudden.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, man. Well, you have yourself a good evening, and we'll talk to you. We'll bring you on the show again probably whenever. I'll just talk to you and find out when we can do it. I know we got a lot of other subjects we can talk about.
I hope you enjoy your night.
Great. Thanks, guys. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. We've been talking to A&E's Ghost Hunter, Brandon Alvis, and you can check him out on April 8th on A&E at a 2-hour special of Ghost Hunters. And, of course, once again, remember, March 18th at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to be joined by Daryl Martson. And on March 25th at 8 p.m., we will be joined by Mustafa Gadalari. So hope everyone has a good night. Thank you for listening. And until next week, we will talk to you all later.
By Tascam and Amazon Studios. For more than 30 years, Tascam has developed products for every segment of the sound and music industry. From the high-end audio professional in a major post-production studio to the novice of hobbyist at home, Tascam is everywhere. They are a company committed to providing their customers audio and video solutions that enable breakthroughs by using sound in ways that are exciting as they are accessible, even recording the voices of the dead. You asked for a non-scripted paranormal TV show. You begged for a non-staged paranormal TV show. You begged and you pleaded, and we have listened. We present to you Season 1 of The Paranormal Journey into the Unknown. It was released October 31st, 2017. In this series, we show you what it's like behind the scenes and conducting a real paranormal investigation. Join Gavin Kelly, Paul Purcell, and their special guests to seek out the existence of life after death by going to numerous haunted locations such as jails, hospitals, battlefields, and museums, collecting compelling evidence by means of video, photography, and EVPs. In this season, the crew investigates the St. Albans Sanatorium, Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, Jailhouse Pizza, and the famed Monroe House. And you can watch Season 1 of The Paranormal Journey into the Unknown on Amazon.com right now. Season 2 and 3 will be coming soon.